Hi, we last left off by talking about the idea that we all have social information processing biases, and that comes from the experiences we had in childhood and adolescence with popularity. Our peers from back when we were kids are still affecting how we see things, how we interpret things, what we want, and the behaviors that we engage in this day. That we are going to talk about now a couple of very common biases that we have seen in the research literature that really tell us a lot of about why some kids with peer rejections experiences grow up to have difficulties across many domains in their lives. And the first of this is referring to a hostile attribution bias. Specifically, this is referring up to the co-interpretation phase. But what we found in that people with a hostile attribution bias that actually affects all the different areas of social information processing. And here is how we study it with young kids. Kids might look at a little picture like this and there are read a story. This one says, imagine you are sitting at a lunch table at school eating lunch and you look up and you see another child coming over to your table with a carton of milk. You turn around to eat your lunch and the next thing that happens is that the child spills milk all over your back. The milk gets your shirt all wet. Why did the child get milk all over your back? And that story is read and then kids are just asked, tell us why you think that happened. And then that information can be coded. Most people will say that it was an accident, the milk probably spilled, and how the milk all got on the back, and it's okay. But there are some kind that would say no, that was done on purpose. That was done because the kid was being mean and because they were trying to get milk all over me. Here is another scenario. Imagine you brought your new toy to school today. You saved up money to buy the toy and you want to show it to the other kids at school. You let another child play with it for a few moments while you go to get a drink of water. When you get back, you see that the child has broken your brand new toy. Again, a lot of people would say, why would the child have broken the toy on purpose? It was just an accident. Somehow it just happened. But some kids that we would say have a hostile attribution bias, would look at the experience and say that happened because the kid broke the toy on purpose just to be mean to me. It turns out that kids with a hostile attribution bias during childhood and adolescence, and also when they grow up, they tend to have a biased or distorted way of experiencing all of the social information processing steps. So, if you ask kids to look at a picture or to watch a video and you ask them to tell you what they saw, hostile attribution biased kids will selectively see the things in their visual field that suggest aggression. Even if you control for how aggressive these kids were previously, we find that kids who were rejected by peers develop an increased tendency to have this hostile attribution bias, and they see more aggressive things in front of them, and they fail to see positive things in front of them. Kids that are maybe laughing and playing with each other. As we just talked about, queer interpretation is also affected, so when presented with an ambition situation, why did someone walk by and their shoulder dumped your shoulder? They would say that didn't on purpose, it was a mean that everyone else would probably not think that. When you give them an interpretation and you say they didn't on purpose, it was to be mean, and everyone else would probably not think that. When you give them an interpretation and you say imagine a situation in which someone was meaning to you, what would you do? So in other words, we are holding constant the current interpretation. These kids with a hostile attribution biases, they are more likely to come up with very aggression scenarios. So their goals would be: I want to get back into that, I want to make them feel bad, I want to hurt them. If you think about it, even as adults, there are ways in which people who are wrong, whether in the workplace or whether in a romantic partnership, their desire is specifically to try and get back at them. That's something that we are seeing stemming from hustling attribution bias. Even when you say to some people we want to hold constant to your goal clarification. Let's say that you are trying to find a way to resolve a conflict. People with a hostile attribution bias would say, well, the way that I would do that's and there would list a whole bunch of aggressive responses. I would yell them, I would scream at them, I would psychically hit them. People with a hostile attribution bias tend to think about those type of things, select those type of things. And even if you give someone the answer, if you say, let's think of a way that you could settle an argument in the most calm, healthy way, something that would help you enhance your relationship with the person. Now we are going to do a role play. So that would test the response enactment phase. But you have given them the response selection. People, children, adolescents, and adults with a hostile attribution bias have a harder time with that role play, and they tend to end up doing things that a little bit aggressive anyway. Maybe this rings true. Maybe you know somebody out there that hostile attribution bias. Maybe it's you. The way that we see this in adulthood, of course, we don't see people kind of beating each other up with much. That's something you see a little bit more in children and adolescents. But you do see people that tend to act aggressively. We do see towards kids that people with a hostile attribution biases tend to also be aggressive towards other children emotionally or physically. We also have this in ways that are a little bit more subtle. So, for instance, in the workplace, we see that people with a hostile attribution bias grow up to assume that they're being kind of blown off by their coworkers, when someone might innocently forget to credit of a coworker with an accomplishment. They see that as being a specific attack as something that happened on purpose. They were left out, it was due to someone way in which they were being used, or someone was trying to pull them down and thwart their ability to be promoted in the work environment. So this is how hostile attribution based types of people see their workplace. As a result, these are folks that don't tend to do as well at work. They come late, they leave early. Research shows that they are more likely to steal office supplies. They badmouth the workplace to other people, and they're even more likely to quit. We even now have some research to show that there are maybe integrational effects. So, if the same adults that we have hostile attribution bias grow up to become parents, then what we find is it change the way that they are parents, and it changes their kids. Nicole Werner did a research study where she looked at moms who had hostile attribution biases, and she measured how much moms had a hostile attribution biases when asked to interpret what happened between moms and other adults, what happened between moms and kids, especially their kids. And also, when they were given scenarios and asked to interpret what was happening between two children, and they got all the information from moms, and then they found out how the kids were doing by asking these kids' teachers to complete an assessment for of how aggressive the kids were. Well, what they found with moms who had hostile attribution biases, they tended to think that the kids were more likely to be hostile towards their children. So, in other words, when they were asked to interpret a scenario in which their kids were interacting with other kids, and something that most people would think was a natural exchange was occurring, these moms thought that what was really happening was that other kids were teasing their son or daughter, and they tended to respond in a way that made them feel like they need to protect their children or they need to fight back for their children. Also, interestingly, these moms tended to say that when they got into fights with their own children, they thought it wasn't because of their children expressing their needs or their uh, child being just tired or hungry or some other reason why their child was being upset. They were more likely to think their children were being hostile towards them, towards the parent on purpose. And of course, you can imagine that changed a lot about how that kid would then be written, or how that mom feels about being a mom. Also, what happened is that moms with a hostile attribution bias, they tended to be kids that their kids tend to grow up to be more aggressive. The teachers independently reported that those same kids, the ones of the moms who had a hostile attribution biases, were the ones that fought about with their classmates, got angry among their class, and tended to be more physically and more upsettable when it came to a scenario that most kids tended to not that is many problems with. So one example of type of bias that will happen in childhood and adolescence that tends to have an effect on the way that we experience things all throughout the rest of our lives across in different contexts.